All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. All right. So, you who have stumbled across this lecture, settle down and intend to listen to it. If the lecture has found you out of 8 billion people, if you've just somehow come across this, stay for the whole thing. I wanted to speak about, first of all, who you're hearing if you're a new listener. I am Muslim. I am a sci-fi writer. And I'm a human being as much as it concerns cyberspace. In 2014, decided to give 10,000 lectures in this lifetime, for my lifetime. For the betterment of mankind. A decade has passed and now you're listening to me. Still here. So what's important is to acknowledge that there's a system admin. This is a big deal. It is 2024. There is 8 billion human beings, 8 billion organisms, and points of intelligence. These points of intelligence have a capability of identifying their self, identifying others, and identifying a world. This is the basics of reality. This is the basics of world design. We look at the existential condition as it relates to the physical existence of man. And I am not per se a teacher or messenger simply, or a prophet simply because I speak through desire. That's what poets do. The difference between poets and prophets is that prophets don't speak through desire. But the poet sees a beauty that in some sense must be unleashed out of its performance in the life. You see, it's the dynamic of I'm pretty much seeing something, I'm defining what that thing is, and then I'm wondering about the properties of the initial definition I gave in accordance to what it actually is. I consider that God, this world, I'm repeating myself, but it's necessary. Okay, let me simplify it. Okay, because I keep starting from a general context, it keeps repeating. Let me start from the specific. I'm acknowledging that God is uncaused. It caused causation. It caused the soul. There was misconduct, and the soul is being tested again. And so life is not meaningless as if it's an empty room, a rock in the middle of nowhere, but in some sense it is the opposite. It is the most meaningful as it can get. That the original power, the original station, position of the realm is accessing us. That means God can access man, man cannot access God. God is beyond man. Therefore, God can, in some sense, do that which is beyond man. But man can only envision that which is limited to at least some sort of reference, conceptual reference. And you know, it's interesting to me. It's interesting that there are so many ways to look at this world. So you'll come to my conclusion, a similar conclusion as me, when you will realize what the body, it's trying to survive. Endless survival is another synonym for immortality. Like, you'll understand why I'm giving these talks if you realize there is another dimensional contact point. Not dimensional, there's another level to life. And most human beings I see, I think it's very rare. I think 95%, maybe 95%, let's say 90% of the species is just functioning on a level of body and a level of mind. It's object, subject, video game, outcome. But to find a moment to contact the Supreme, to be in the presence of the Supreme, that means to advance civilization, we require an advanced power. You know, to advance alongside the most advanced, in the presence of the most advanced. That means it's as if my relationship with God is similar to a being, just a child asking for forgiveness. I had an ego that wanted to, um, it's kind of like you want to prevent the future generations from being conquered. And so the body's purpose, survival. Therefore, it wants immortality. The mind, its purpose is service. The mind is an ability. If this ability doesn't feel it's serving that which is bigger than itself, it's going to feel hollow. Let me tell you what's wrong with most human beings. There's a reason the species should be depressed. We have been stripped from our honor of our origin, our honor for our creator. You know, modern humanity has dishonored the creator to the degree that we have made ourselves equal to it. And that is a tragedy. Self worship is a hidden prison. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. It is not me that is important. It is not just you that is. It is not you that is important. It is not the world that is important. It is pretty much what is there that we can do, and it is decision making. Oh, human being, you open your eyes. Value proposition is shown. Decisions are made. These decisions change the value proposition. And at some point, you have to accept a value proposition. And what it means is that the world is showing you something, and the brain is telling you a story. And the brain's like it's as if like you like right now. If I ask you, who are you? You're gonna be like, yo, man, I'm my body. What do you mean, who am I? I'm like, okay, but what's moving your body? And you're like, okay, I am moving. And I'm like, what is that I? And you're like, the I am is a thought. I'm a thought right now. And you're a thought. Da da da. It's simple. It's like Lego thoughts, you know, adding and subtracting. You know, it's not that easy, ladies and gentlemen. Because it doesn't need to be that boring. For me, it is honestly, I've reached a point where I am so bored with everything that I have seen. I don't want to say with everything I've seen. I mean, there's so much I haven't seen yet, but I'm saying I was existentially bored until I realized we need the tour guide, we need the system admin. So my wisdom as a human being in 2024 to all 8 billion other human beings on this planet. There's so many stories you can tell yourself, but pretty much whether you're secular, whether you're religious, whatever story you tell yourself, we human beings are functioning inside systems. Like for example, law is an invisible system administration. When a person is an employee of a company, they're being administered by a system. When you own assets, you're administering a system. So everything is, we're chill with everything system at being administered in a system like way on earth, but when it comes to the whole world, we're like, no, there is no system admin. Like, yeah, I own my house, but there is no owner to the world. Like, look at that's man's mind in 2024. And it is ignorance because the idea of God was never limited to an era in history. It was in some sense the championing of the final message that all creature in the world, what is worthy of worship is only that which is beyond the world. And that which is beyond the world cannot be a form. So I am saying when you stop worshiping any form at all, You're like, wait a minute, that means I can't worship myself, I can't worship others, I can't worship the world, I can't worship language. So what happens? You're in the pure presence of your creator. It's a mystery. That means even if you become super spiritual and try to go figure out what the real self is, it's a mystery. There is no enlightened people. There is divine decree though. And a person is as enlightened as they are close to the creator. There could be a billionaire, or somebody who just advanced civilization, and there could be someone who's just like a simple, foolish, playful person. And we can see that that simple, foolish, playful person is way closer to God, the system admin, than the person who's in some sense needing a terminal. You see, reason is the beginning of connection of attention to form. You're right now listening to a human being that for decades spoke about an advanced civilization, concluded that to advance communication is the only way to bring about the advanced civilization, and then eventually in 2024 right now, he has come to the realization, to the conclusion that the most advanced communication is God. And so for us to just test it out, there's so many people use the scientific method to test God. But let me tell you how to test it. For a second, consider that there was a higher power, an original power to the realm, and this original power had the ability of its own decree to do anything it wanted. So imagine anything is possible if God wills it. If God wills it, in the next day, like I could have 1 million subscribers. That's the power of it. Because I've seen the automation of it beyond the human will. I've seen it move beyond us. And when I say I've seen it, it's not God is beyond. The whole point is we are being tested if we think the moderator is the admin. It is not. Do not worship people. It's a very challenging test. It's like, wait a minute. How do I pass an exam that's performance-based, but I can't worship anything other than the creator, but I have to put my attention on myself, and attention is equivalent to worship if it stays somewhere. The arrival of the most advanced humanity comes through the recognition that the most advanced power was already here. If let's say right now in 2024, let's say in let's say in a hypothetical sci-fi setting, I have a mind capable of envisioning these things. Many will in the future, and so what the idea is simply that, let's say if extraterrestrials landed on Earth and they just came up in front of me and they're like, yo, we're gonna invade Earth. I would just step out of my car, light a cigarette, and I'll be like, let's talk. And I would be like, why are you guys invading Earth? And they'll be, do you guys need resources? Do you need something? And they'll be like, no, we're tough guys and we just want Earth and you guys can't do anything about it. And I would be like, okay, you have no ethical standard. Then it's a different combat, a different response. So I would, in some sense, look at that extraterrestrial force that has come and, in some sense, threatened to invade Earth, and I would be like, you don't realize that when you are threatening the human race, you're not threatening just the human race. You are threatening souls created by the uncaused original position beyond the world. We are members of the original world, which is uncaused. So the causal cannot touch us. And we stand as fearless souls. And the extraterrestrial egos, in some sense, are stunned and vanish. They vanish as if in an instant they were stunned and gone. Because you don't get it, guys. If you're secular, I'm trying to say the most advanced system is in some sense, like, I can explain it in a secular way, in a non-secular way. And in 2023, the only thing missing was my actual proof that the creator, that God is here. God is here, guys. The system admin is here. And so are moderators. And so are even noobs, lesser beings. And your task is in some sense to play the human role. You were designed by a master designer, you know. Today there was a time where I was like, man, I haven't been depressed for a while. I haven't self-loathed in a while. And then I realized, how can I be self-loathed? Because now the philosophical constitution of my being is considering that I am a soul. And there is the realm, the world. You know, I didn't hear anything about God creating a mind. God created a soul, the soul descended, and in some sense is in the world. So the relationship of the soul with the world is the mind. Oh, somebody's writing stuff in the chat section. Oh my God. God is moving, people. Okay, it's nonsense. All right. Welcome, guys. If you feel you want to be negative or positive in the chat section, feel free, but just be creative, right? And also, you know, realize that I'm saying, all right, be cynical as much as you want. We have to care for everybody's great-grandchildren. We just have to. So what caliber of a human being are you? When somebody speaks about an advanced civilization, when somebody speaks about the most advanced power, when somebody says we're members inside a system and there's mods and we must directly go to the system admin, and through the initial recognition and the simple acknowledgement, it's equivalent a story that I say that like the way I have experienced, like what I feel, okay? Like this is a parable I've created to get as a metaphor to explain to people how I've experienced like a sort of like how my relationship with God is. Okay? Imagine back in the day in medieval times, the lower class, the peasant, you know, the villagers in some sense inside the kingdom, inside the palace walls, could never see inside the palace. It was like never possible. It was rare. That means the fact that you got to work in the palace was like some divine grace of God. You got to witness that, right? So this metaphor I'm giving you is, imagine I'm a blacksmith, okay? And back in the day, I'm just like the son of a notable blacksmith, right? And I've designed a sword that is super light, and it is the most genius, strategic, carryable sword ever. And so imagine the king was like, oh my God, sorry, not the king. Some smart businessman quickly saw the sword, and went to the king in some sense, bought the sword and went to the one of the princes that he had access to, the highest prince, the oldest prince, and said to the prince, this is the greatest sword, I have brought it to you as a gift, and in some sense, please show it to the king. And then in some sense, the oldest prince says, in some sense, I am animating the story too much, but don't worry, the idea is there. The essence of it is right there. So the prince is like, who created this sword? And in some sense looks at the businessman and says, in some sense, bring that kid. Bring that person who created this sword in the palace on this day. So it's like a prince giving an invitation to a person. So this humble blacksmith, okay, that this genius blacksmith, let's say this young blacksmith is suddenly there given, and this businessman comes and says, you're lucky, kid, and like throws a gold coin, at the store and says, you're lucky, kid, the prince wants to see you and you need to explain how you made this sword, right? And the kid says, only under one condition I will come, right? Only if my parents can come too. And imagine there was an old father and old mother. Imagine something like this. The family of the individual. The kid doesn't budge. Eventually, the businessman gets the prince's permission. It's permitted, like 100% authorized, it's okay, and it can be done. So nothing messed up happens. Like savageness from the businessman or something, like typical expectation. You know, I'm totally creating. See, guys, I'm a writer, so this happens in the middle of giving a metaphor. So pretty much, okay, here's the essence. Here's the moral of why I'm sharing this. Imagine that moment that blacksmith, right, in all the years of his life, in 30 years of his life, has never got to see the palace and has passed it by every day as if some inaccessible area, some hidden world only the privileged have access to. And then this kid goes into the palace, and the parents go into the palace. He brings the parents, you know, the senior parents there too. And they all stay there, you know, and the kid is just standing there firm as if he can't wait to share the genius of the design. The moment comes after various guests come, all the important people come, right? And then after that, the prince stands up and, and says, "Father, I want to present to you a sword created by one of our own sword, what do you call it? Blacksmiths. And it is the greatest sword I have ever held." And the father's like, my oldest son is saying this, the father is the king. And imagine that moment where the kid has just gone in the presence of royalty, and he doesn't even doesn't even start with making eye contact. His eyes are just pointed downwards. His head just, kind of 90-degree angle or some shit. Excuse my language. The king says, look up or something, and everybody's watching, and the king says, "Tell me how you designed this sword." And this blacksmith looks at the king and says, "This sword was not just designed by me, Your Highness. This sword was also designed by you, and everybody in this room designed this sword, because I was raised in this kingdom, and in some sense the materials came from this kingdom, and in some sense the ideas I had for this sword came from this kingdom, and you run this kingdom, and I am in some sense honored to be in your presence." And the king's like, "Yo, upgrade this kiddo," Guys, that's not actually the metaphor of my relationship with God. Really what it is it's in the presence of such a mighty superior force. I just got carried away on a tangent and animated the story in a completely different way. But pretty much what I'm telling you is, going back to it, the metaphor of it was simply this: that I realized how inferior I am, how ignorant I am, how there are still sins and desires and lower world, stuff. And you don't understand. For me, prayer is in some sense like somebody just putting their head out of water and getting fresh air. It's like the soul suddenly noticing what the most important factor is. You might not believe it, but for a Muslim, in the holy book, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, the one and only, that which is uncaused beyond the world, says that I have created mankind and jinn kind only for the purpose to worship me. What that means is the purpose of us as beings, as humans, to have this awareness of having an ability to communicate and interact, have intelligent interactions take place, right? The most intelligent interaction is your connection to your creator as the created. That means forget the just the like it's not like a a book you got to study for an exam. It's in some sense a life that is happening. And alongside how advanced you are, it is the advancement of the world. That means you might not believe it, but the world is like a giant. Every day there's giant events happening, right? And the soul is beyond shape. That means if there is the notion of soul, that like there's this idea in Islam that before the soul was born in the womb and in some sense manifested in this world, was born into this world, all souls were in a realm called Alam al-Arwa. And Alam al-Arwa was in some sense a realm where in here, let me tell you what it means. Alam al-Arwa is an Arabic phrase that literally translates to the world of souls. So before we were born, anybody before you were born, all the souls were in Alam al-Arwa. So pretty much we have one idea that in the Quran it is said that the soul is the secret of God, and then we have a hadith which is what the Prophet revealed. And if you're someone who in some sense you have honor for a prophet, right, or for an advanced archetype of humanity, you don't understand. Like if you become a poet one day, you'll understand what majesty and superior beings prophets are. So the words and the phrases, the stuff that the prophet said to the ummah, those who were there around him in some sense, those have become the hadith. And the hadith has levels in regards to authenticated, that means verified from various sources. You know, people look at Islam and they just think it's just a behaviorology. No, 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 no. It is so deep. It is so deep that and so full that it's as if, like, we don't realize it, but to put our attention to truly that one singular point beyond all form is to free ourselves from the loops of the effects of our attention going to any form. So Alam al-Arwa was mentioned in the hadith, which was the sayings of the Prophet. And the Prophet, in some sense, people were like, okay, Prophet, we're souls. What about souls? And the Prophet said, Alam al-Arwa, the realm of the souls, the world of someone, and they're like your enemy. You can't get along with them. And somebody, you suddenly instantly get along with them. It's because technically, from an angle, from a view, it is as if you are either of the same rank or you're not of the same rank. And if you're a being that is being suffering, you are in a place, you're mispositioned. That means you are outranked for where you are. And unfortunately, we don't have an advanced civilization that has the capability to immediately come and find the talent of the world and collectivize it towards the most efficient effort that humanity can go forth in the sight of the most advanced power, which is the system admin. That means if like temptation comes, let's say when I say mods, like if you were a Hindu, the mods would be all the deities, right? If you're, for example, Christian, the mod would be the devil. If you're Muslim, the mod would be the devil. You know? If it's in the Abrahamic traditions. Mods means it has a capability beyond the human, but it doesn't have access the same way the system admin does. So we're not just being tested on how ethical and good we are also being tested on how advanced or how you increase your intelligent interaction levels. This is something I created, by the way, guys. You don't understand. I reached this point where I couldn't connect to the educational system, and I was like, man, now I have to, in some sense, create the library of the world that I see. So souls of the same rank. And you know what this is? It's purity. And you might not believe it, but it's like the simpler way to live is actually a way more advanced way to live. But in today's modern world, we have to kind of, it's like the mind is moving at a way faster speed than our bodies can attain. So the body, so the mind, it's like a part of us is like, oh man, I can envision like having a Bugatti, right? I mean, who wants a Bugatti really? I can envision having like, let's say a certified like 100% safe like a hover car. I can envision having a hover car, right? Which is pretty much like cars will evolve into mini spaceships. I mean, what else can we say? I can envision something that is not here yet I am accessing it. We are different ranks. You might be higher rank than me. I might be a lower rank than you. I thought I had a very big spiritual ego, and I thought I knew the unknown because I had experienced it. But I realized no, the system admin, it's way more advanced. That means there's this idea that says if a human being wants to give itself something, it's limited to the imaginable. But when God gives you something, it is unimaginable. So think of it this way: you have the option of imaginable imperfection or unimaginable perfection. But the unimaginable perfection comes from purifying one's life, and which means it is to begin realizing, okay, what's the point of being in an empty room other than having the hope that it was truly filled? The most advanced intelligence is here. So if you're secular, you're like, okay, Mr.Within, I see what you're saying, but I can't, buy into the ideology of God. I'm like, okay, buy into the ideology of system administrator. It's just language. It's just a staircase for your attention to truly see that our hearts beat beyond our control. God's power is proven. If we notice, just look at the reality. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. I want to tell you that I'm an old school guy because I'm a writer. Like there was something about a room with a candlelight and having one of those like old school pens with ink and writing on like old parchment that to me was like epic. Or even like old school letters. Like imagine like when people in world wars or something, like they would give letters or something, right? Feel free to write me like an email, but a legit letter, because I frame all the letters. Anyways, guys, I gotta end the talk. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Thank you for listening.